So what if you plan your trust today, quietly setting up to be successful? And what happens if you get blindsided later? It's not a scare tactic. It's a pattern I've seen played out again and again and again. For more than 4 decades, I've seen this happen. I'm Mike Adams, Adams Financial Concepts, and I manage discretionary client accounts. And over the past 40 years, people have come to me at two critical moments. After they've already been blindsided, or when they sense something is wrong and they want to avoid it. Both groups have one thing in common. They did what they were told, they followed conventional advice, and they assumed that their plan would hold up. That was common to both groups, and too often it didn't. Christine was one of those. She did everything right. When her husband died in 1978, she appeared financially set. She seemed to be secure. They'd already planned carefully, they'd saved diligently, and they'd done everything right. The advisor built a safe portfolio, dividend stocks for growth and bonds for income. On paper, it looked solid. But by 1986, just 8 years later, her situation had deteriorated dramatically. Christine was just 53 years old. But at 53 or 40 or 70, it's easy to think it's a retirement problem and I've got time. But here's the truth. Most financial advisors don't start at retirement. They start decades earlier with strategies that quietly quit working. And if you're already retired and no working income, it can be even worse. Christine's plan depended upon assumptions that felt reasonable. The bonds would reasonably and reliably produce income, that inflation would remain low, and that safe meant secure. Those assumptions failed. And history shows it's not unusual. For Christine, well, we'll get to the rest of the story. Stay with me. It wasn't that long ago that the most respected experts completely missed what was coming. Before the Great Recession, top strategists confidently predicted strong market gains in 2008 and 2009. Top Wall Street analysts like Abby Joseph Cohen at Goldman Sachs believed the markets would finish much higher in 2008. Even after the downturn had already begun, she was saying markets would turn much higher. So did the analysts at Citigroup and Bank of America, and others said that the market in 2008 was only going to go up, that the subprime mortgage was just a minor issue that would be easily overcome. Major publications forecast steady returns, and they said that the subprime crisis would pass away quickly. Investors who trusted in those predictions were blindsided and the market plunged. But it wasn't the first time. During the dot-com era, influence voice, a number of voices talked again and again about how brick and mortar was dead. Brick and mortar was gone. It was a time of the internet, and people were going to do their shopping on the internet. They were going to do business on the internet. And in a lot of ways, they were right, but it was too early. In terms of predictions, there's a guy by the name of Philip Tetlock, who is the expert on forecasting, super forecasting. He wrote the book Super Forecasting, and he was a graduate student at UCLA in 1987. No, at Berkeley. I got that wrong. And he took a look at predictions by a broad range of experts. predictions about the Soviet Union, predictions about the Gulf War, predictions about the Japanese real estate bubble, predictions about Ottawa seceding from Canada. He looked at the conclusions in the book later on, a book called Expert Political Judgment. And what he found is that those predictions were no better than random choice. The experts were grossly overconfident. 15% of the events they said had no chance whatsoever to happen, did in fact happen. And 25% of the things that they said were table pounding, you could count on it, absolutely for sure, 25% did not work out. The experts had 80% confidence in the predictions, but they only got up 45% right. And so Philip Tetlock came along and said, there's two types of people who talk about predictions. There's what he called the hedgehogs and the foxes. The hedgehogs predicted big things happening. They were the media experts. He said there's a correlation between the times that people appear in the media and times when they don't appear in the media, but they make a lot of small predictions. The hedgehogs, the people that predict the most, are most often wrong. They get all the coverage. They get all the media coverage, but they're more often wrong than they're right. And what happens? You're watching this. I'm not a great presenter. I admit that. But it's not what I say as much as what I do and what happens. Most people look at people making presentations they like or they're charismatic, and they listen to the predictions and they buy into the predictions because this is what they're told and because it kind of follows what their own philosophy is. They don't look at the track record. Instead, they just listen to the predictions. I can remember going to a conference and the keynote speaker spent time talking about how Mitt Romney was a shoo-in to be elected. Obama was going to be a loser. And therefore, these are the things you could do in terms of investing. A year later, that same person was a keynote speaker at that same conference. I was sitting next to a guy who, when the keynoter started to talk, he just got up and left his lunch. That was a person who really looked at what the person had said the year before, knew how wrong he was, and couldn't stand him up there talking again about how to invest and what to invest in. So each time investors follow conventional wisdom and the experts, very often they're blindsided. They listen to the story. They buy into the story. They don't look at the facts. They don't look at the actual track record. And so the real question is not whether the markets will change. They will change. And we're in the process of seeing that change now. So the question is, again, is your strategy going to work or will it break? Sorry, I keep picking up the papers to look at my notes. Because right now we're seeing warning signs. We're seeing a slowing economic growth. We're seeing uneven job growth. We're seeing layoffs, significant layoffs. We're seeing persistent inflation. We're seeing the layoffs, especially in the software side, as AI comes to impact. The reach of AI is across a broad spectrum. It's talking about eliminating a lot of jobs. And at the same time, a lot of households are being squeezed financially. If you look at the economy, the top 1/3 of earners are doing really well. They're driving the economy. The bottom 2/3 of earners are struggling to meet their expenses, their day-to-day expenses of food, medicine. They are the people, if they're retired, they're sitting down and trying to make a decision. Do I spend my money on food and cut back on medicine? Or do I buy medicine and cut back on food? That's a real situation. That's happening. So the question is, what do you do right now? By the time Christine came to me, by the time she came, the damage was already really clear. She was running out of money. She was 66 years old now. Her income had been cut in half, and her expenses had actually doubled. From 1978 to 1986, expenses had doubled, and now her income was being cut in half because the cost, the cost was there. And the bonds that had been paying high interest rates were now being called away and replaced by bonds that were paying a less interest rate. She was running out of money. So my approach is very different from most financial advisors. I don't rely on static models. I don't rely on outdated assumptions. Don't want a portfolio to look safe. I want it to be safe. I focus on two things. I focus on recovering and building around one goal, a steady income stream, and a solid net worth. That's the focus. And that's where it was. With Christine, we didn't try to patch up the old plan. We replaced it. We're building a strategy centered on and growing the income stream, a steady income stream, one that you can depend upon, one that she could depend upon month after month after month, not to fade away, and one that would grow over time. We emphasized a limited number of growth stocks in her portfolio. So the growth would furnish a time of growing. At the same time, by liquidating and trimming back some of that, it provided the income that she needed. And for Christine, she lived another 24 years from that time. From the time it looked like she was going to run out of money, she lived another 24 years and never had to worry about running out of money. She experienced the crash of 1987. She experienced the dot-com crash of 2000. She experienced the time of 2008. Her account fluctuated as markets do, but she never had to cut back. She never had to face the fear again. So over the years, I've worked with a number of people like Christine. Some came in shortly after the damage had been done. Most came in before a significant amount of damage had been done. The second group always had one advantage. They reacted before it became a problem. So it doesn't matter if you're 40 or 60 or 80, times change, conditions change. And that means the plan has to be strategic. It has to be functional. It's not putting data into a computer and spitting it out. It's not listening to somebody who tells a great story but has a terrible track record. It's not listening to somebody who doesn't even have a track record. They just have a great story. What are you doing right now? And if this sounds like a commercial, it probably is a commercial. We're dealing with a person who's in a drastic situation. In the last month, her situation is even worse than Christine's. Will we make it out? I don't know. But she's in a lot better shape being here with us than she would be with an existing financial advisor who's predicting she's going to run out of money. She's going to just fall back into a situation where she might have to go into a family home and depend upon the government to pay for the rest of her life. That's not what we want to do. We want to build a situation where there's a steady stream of income that can be counted on and take her through that. Will we be successful in this case? I don't know. It is so far gone. It's really difficult to know. In this case, this is one of the few cases that it's been truly difficult to know. I remember another case where a person came to us, and in their situation with what they needed a 30% return on investment. In that case, I just said, I can't do that. I never would get close to that. At 8 or 9%, maybe even 10%. We have one client who's been taking 10%. And yes, the portfolio value has been declining, but she's been with us long enough that she was able to finish paying off her house. And so even if it completely declines, she's going to be well enough off. And that's where we are. Whether at 40 or 60 or 80, times change. And we're going into what could be a very difficult situation if you're not prepared. If you're dependent upon the same strategy, you could find yourself in Christine's situation. I hope that never happens. But for at least some, that's where they will be. And with that, let me say, this is our track record. This is where we are. Would you rather be on the upper curve? And yes, we have a lot more volatility in what we do. That's the price you pay for watching 500,000 grow to 7.4 million instead of being down here, 500,000 growing to 1.2 million. Where would you rather be? Which curve would you rather be on? Where do you think is the best chance of survival? Where do you think is the best chance of not running out of money? This is not just talk. This is actually what we've done for clients. These are client accounts. These are net values of client accounts. We don't just tell a great story. We deliver a great story. We deliver the results. And with that, let me finish and ask, are there questions?
Hey, Mike, it's Chris, and I am back. And one of the questions that came up is how can someone get a hold of you if they had questions they wanted to ask directly?
You can reach me. Chris is going to put the information in the chat. Copy that, send me an email, and I will respond.
And then, Mike, what I'll also do for the people who are watching this on recording is I will include your contact information in the video description down below, and they can certainly go there and they'll have your email address and your website so they can go and they can communicate with you there.
That sounds great.
Mike, with that, I don't have any other questions queued up aside from my own question. I'm curious, what are we talking about next week?
Next week, you've seen the track record. You've seen how we've done. For over 20 years, my clients have beaten the Standard & Poor's 500 with dividends reinvested. That's the most difficult index there is to beat. I just came from a conference where they're talking about doing new benchmarks. It's some of the things that's coming from the Department of Labor. Department of Labor, with an executive order from President Trump, is recommending that companies set and use and develop benchmark, one that makes them seem like they're beating that benchmark. They're not going to be comparing to the S&P 500. They're going to be comparing to inflation. They're going to be comparing to something that's much less. Over 20 years, my clients have beaten the S&P 500. Next week, I'm going to talk about how I've done that and how, if you're a do-it-yourselfer, you can do it as well.
Mm.
And if you're
Well,
not a do-it-yourselfer, you have to really consider Christine's story. And next week, it could be Ron's story, but that's coming next week. That's where we're headed.
Mike, that's captivating. I'm looking forward to that. And with that, we have no further questions. So I'll thank you for the awesome information today, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
And thanks for being here. I look forward to seeing you next week. Have a very good week.